Well, good evening, everyone. Uh, Welcome to our event this evening. On behalf of the faculty and staff of the Montana State University Department of Education, I'd like to welcome you to this evening's Teacher Education Program Induction Ceremony and Student Teacher Send-Off. My name is Ann Eubank, and I serve as the head of the Department of Education. I'd like to extend a special welcome to those of you viewing on YouTube, including family members, friends, faculty, and staff. In March 2020, the world and our profession changed dramatically. But even though lots of things changed for most of us, probably all of us, our core mission did not change: to ensure that every child in Montana and beyond has excellent teachers who will help them to reach their full potential. I'm grateful to each and every one of you who have chosen to embark upon a career as an educator. To those who will student teach in the fall of 2021, we're sad that we won't be able to work with you each day, but we are so very proud of you and look forward to welcoming you back for your graduation in December. For those of you who have decided to pursue a teaching major and are being inducted into our program tonight, we extend a very warm welcome to you and are so very excited to work with you over the next 2 years as you complete your degree as a professional educator. We'll begin this evening with a keynote from Bozeman Public Schools Interim Co-Superintendent, Dr. Marilyn King. Dr. King possesses building administrative experience at the elementary and middle school levels, as well as K-12 and university teaching experience. She is the LEA for Montana on the National Forum on Education Statistics and also serves as the vice chair of this forum. Her interests include the impacts of instructional leadership on student achievement, change processes in education, school safety, and the use of consensus process in public education. Let's give a warm welcome to Dr. King.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Dr. Eubank. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Thank you for having me, everyone. I'm thrilled to be presenting to this group of esteemed future educators. Right now is an incredibly exciting time to be entering the profession because the field is so dynamic and education is being redefined by educators. Instructional practices are changing based on brain research. The form and content of curriculum is changing based on student needs, and professional development based on more and more collaboration with colleagues and focused around student outcomes. I'm going to begin this presentation by telling you a little about my story because it has impacted how I approach this most important profession, and then impart a bit of advice as you go out, make a difference, and impact lives. My life has been impacted by teachers, my parents and grandparents being my first teachers. If you look on the slide at the left, you'll see my grandparents on my father's side. My grandfather was an immigrant. He escaped extreme poverty and pogroms in Russia. He was a teenager when he immigrated to the Lower East Side of New York and started work as a fabric cutter in the garment industry. He was determined that his children would do better, and both his sons graduated from college with advanced degrees. In his old age, he lived with us, and at our breakfast every morning, in his thick Russian accent that he never lost, he would ask about what I'd be learning in school that day. The slide on the right shows my grandparents. On my mother's side, my grandparents were Dutch. They survived World War II. They had a daughter, my mom, who from the time she was in kindergarten wanted to be a teacher. Before things became unlivable in the Netherlands during the Nazi occupation, my mother went to school. It was her teacher, who she spoke so fondly of, who maintained some amount of normalcy until all schooling stopped during the war. After the war, during Reconstruction in the Netherlands, there was no food, so they sent their only child, my mom, to an unknown family in the United States through a children's aid program. She lived with a family in New York where the mom was a teacher, and that further cemented my mother's desire to teach. And there were two boys. My mom loved to babysit and play school with them. She ultimately went back home to the Netherlands and finished some semblance of high school in a building that probably should have been condemned due to bombings in the immediate vicinity of the school. My grandparents lacked financial resources, so she didn't go to college, she went to work. But she went back to visit the family who took care of her in New York, who loved her like a daughter, and who paid for her trip back to visit them. It was on board a ship that she met my dad. They married. My mom stayed at home until my brother and I were in school, and she never did go back to school, although she always impressed upon us how lucky we were to be able to go to school. When I decided to go into education, she told me how proud and excited she was that I had decided to return to school to follow my dream and to do what she wasn't able to do. Here's Public School 11, PS 11, on Staten Island in New York. My brother was 3 years ahead of me and was a really good student, so I had a lot to live up to. But I loved school too. I loved my teachers. I tried to emulate my teachers. Mr. Zena played the guitar and sang John Denver songs, so I learned them on the piano. Miss Boardman loved math and made it into a game, so I loved math too. Here I am in 5th grade. That's me in the middle, in the first row. Our teacher was Miss Primavera. She was incredible. I still remember my classroom and where I sat. She stood at the door of the classroom at the end of every day and said something special to each of us as we exited the classroom. She nurtured my love of writing. Here's Egbert Junior High School. I was there for grades 6 through 9. I remember Ms. Cardoza. She was the first person I know to use the title Ms. She was my social studies teacher, and she lit a fire in her students about civil rights and the importance of speaking up. I remember that I had terrible test anxiety, and she let me come to her room after school and retake every test. This is Newdorp High School on Staten Island. It was huge. It had about 2,500 students. Here are 3 teachers that I remember well. Mr. Caruso on the top left was one of my science teachers. I had him for physics. He had a demonstration about force and motion that was legendary, and it included a huge pointy rock on a rope and a student volunteer. Mr. Costa in the middle was our guidance counselor who ate with students in the cafeteria. Mrs. Murphy, who helped me over several evenings and weekends at her home on an essay I submitted to a contest. I don't remember the essay or the contest, but I remember her and how she helped me. Teaching wasn't my first career. I love science and writing. I received a bachelor's degree in biology and a master's degree in technology and human affairs, and set out in a career in engineering, planning to write on the side. But after less than a year, I decided that what I really wanted to do was teach. I returned to school, which was absolutely fine by me, and received my teaching credentials. Here's Safford Magnet Middle School, the school where I student taught and where I started my teaching career. This was in Tucson, Arizona. The school was located in the barrio. It was a magnet school, which meant that it received a large amount of additional funding designed to attract a more diverse student body from throughout the school district. It was located on the south side of Tucson, which at the time was in a gang-infested neighborhood. Most students who attended this school lived well below the poverty level, and a lot of the students came from really hard places. I had 41 students in my class my first year of teaching. The students and staff I worked with at this school solidified my commitment to teaching and making a difference. How do you make a difference? How do you impact a life? My message to you as you embark on your teaching journey is absolutely fundamental. Positive student-teacher relationships matter. In fact, student-teacher relationships significantly impact teacher effectiveness and student achievement. When the Bozeman Public Schools switched to remote learning, it was hard. The students who managed the best were the ones who had positive relationships with their teachers. The teachers who felt most effective and fulfilled were the ones who had positive relationships with their students. Those relationships transcended a global pandemic and the fact that traditional face-to-face instruction couldn't occur. You've probably heard about John Hattie's meta-analysis, Visible Learning, that points to several student-teacher relationship variables, including empathy, warmth, encouragement, authenticity, and respect for student backgrounds, to be among the most influential factors on student performance. Research aside, it's common sense that students will work harder and learn better from teachers who care. Here's a photo of some of my students who came to my classroom during lunch that first year of teaching at Safford. My classroom during lunch was kind of a chill place where students could eat and goof around. I always also had cookies. After we got to know one another, we used it as an informal class period. These students were incredible, smart, funny, resilient, sometimes difficult. They had limited abilities in English, which was not their native language. There are 5 children in this photo. At the time this photo was taken, one was homeless. One had recently lost his brother in a shooting, and 2 came from single-parent homes. We basically did a lesson a day ahead of time, so they felt prepared and confident for the actual full class lesson and activity. They achieved. I knew they could. 13 words. I have very high expectations, and I know that you can reach them. You must believe that every child is capable of succeeding. In addition, you must expect them to do so. And you must clearly demonstrate these beliefs to your students. Show that you can expect good behavior, effort, and improvement from every child in your classroom. Push them to achieve more than they thought possible. Of course, there are specific ways a teacher should provide feedback to students. Feedback should be timely, and feedback should absolutely reference a skill or specific knowledge. But there's a secret sauce, a signal that creates something more powerful, a sense of belonging and connection. It takes 13 words. I have very high expectations, and I know that you can reach them. Looking closer, that phrase contains several distinct signals. You are part of this group. This group is special. We have higher standards here. I believe you can reach those standards. Now, don't soft pedal the high standards. Don't pretend that it's easy. Do the opposite. Emphasize the toughness of the task and your belief that they have what it takes. So back to my science classroom at Safford Magnet Middle School. I had a principal there whose motto was, whatever it takes. In 7th grade science, students studied rainforests. We built a rainforest in my classroom. I remember telling students that's what we were going to do. One student said, "We can't build a rainforest, miss." I said, "Sure we can, and yes we will. Who wants to do it?" So it took a month and a lot of paper and a lot of time. It was huge. Students came in early, stayed late, came on weekends. Parents came too. If you don't believe your students can learn and improve, why should they? Every student created a personal set of goals that covered the content standards they needed to master. Most students, in fact, though, needed additional support. They came anyway. They came every day. I actually bumped into Guillermo, who is the student in the upper left, years later. He had graduated high school, had a good job, and was married with their first baby on the way. He talked about how much that project meant to him. He still remembered, like, just a couple of things he learned about sloths and strangler figs, and we were laughing about that. But one of the best things he remembered, he told me, was that he could do well in school. Get to know your students and teach content in ways that are interesting and relevant to students. Take the time to know your students as individuals. Learn about their families, backgrounds, interests, likes, and dislikes. It is impossible to be inclusive and sensitive if you don't know your students. Once you learn information about your students, bring it up in conversation, asking, how did your soccer game go? Or did you see the latest Marvel movie yet? Those questions mean more to your students than you might expect. Take a moment every day with every child to be fully present. Remember that in seemingly small moments, relationships are built. The more you know your students' families, the better you'll understand your students, and the more connected your students are with school. Make it a goal to call each family in the first few weeks of school. Share a positive observation of their student, and then ask parents or guardians or grandparents what you should know about their child to best teach them and what would be a good strategy. It's a great way to get to know your students and your students' families. We often talk about the importance of teaching students empathy and encouraging them to consider the perspectives of others. Practice this. Put yourself in your students' shoes to understand their experiences. This will help you understand the root cause of an issue or problem behavior so that you can better address their needs. You'll be modeling the importance of civil discourse, a lifelong skill. Humor builds bonds with students, making learning more engaging and encourages children to pay attention. Share funny stories. Don't take yourself too seriously. Students will feel comfortable taking academic risks when you create a comfortable learning environment. Every student is unique. Accept them all. All means all. Treat all students with the same respect and kindness. Create an environment where all students feel welcome and comfortable. It will allow them to persevere. Remember that the children who need your support the most sometimes show it in the most destructive ways. Never stop trying to reconnect or to connect. Consider how you can help even the most challenging students succeed. What skills are they missing? What do they need? In addition, accept that mistakes are a natural part of learning and instill this belief in your students. When they make mistakes, ask them, what did you learn from that? And celebrate the lesson learned. As a professional, embrace opportunities that come along that will enrich your professional toolkit and support your students in welcoming new experiences. In the Bozeman Public Schools, we spend a lot of time talking with students about growth versus fixed mindsets. As a teacher and now as an administrator, I often use the phrase the power of yet. It means for me personally and for students that just because they can't do something yet doesn't mean they can't do it. Impact a life. The women on the left need no introduction. The student on the right, though, is Mikey Anderson, an 8th grader at Sacagawea Middle School, who just received a National Prudential Community Spirit Award. During COVID, he realized how isolated people would feel over the holiday season and developed a plan to help senior citizens feel more connected. He created the Montana Share Our Stories holiday campaign. Google it. It's fantastic. My grandparents, parents, teachers, mentors, colleagues, and students shaped my passion for education and my career because I let them into my life. I knew they cared. Remember that students won't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Once they let you in, you will be a larger than life figure to most students. You'll be their champion. You'll be their hero. Consider that and go out and do great things with children. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. King, for those wonderful words of inspiration. So for those of you who are participating, please show some thank yous using your emojis. So in just a few moments, we will recognize our incoming teacher education program students. But before we do so, I'd like to share a few thoughts based on my own 10 years experience as a middle school and a high school teacher. I began my career in Yuma, Arizona in high school social studies. That's fairly close to where Dr. King taught, in the same area of Southern Arizona. In this position, I worked with English language learners and refined my ability to teach in a culturally responsive manner. After a few years teaching high school, I took a position teaching middle school. I wasn't sure how to work with this age group, but I quickly learned that I loved middle schoolers. I taught middle school for 7 years, and for 5 of those years, I was the school librarian. I enjoyed working with all students in my school librarian position and was able to develop good relationships with the teachers as well. I enjoyed the opportunity for school leadership that being a librarian afforded me. So my first piece of advice to you all is to get involved in school activities and committees. I learned so much from those with whom I worked. And then my second piece of advice is to think about teaching students first and teaching subjects second. I still keep in touch with quite a few students from my time in middle and high school. Abe was my student in senior government and economics. After a career in Washington, D.C. in international relations, he went back to school to earn his teaching license and now teaches middle school social studies in Vail, Arizona. I was the Key Club sponsor when I taught high school, and JR was an active member. He now has a master's degree in applied behavior analysis and works with children and adults with autism spectrum disorder. Alicia was one of my middle school library aides, and she is finishing her 10th year teaching 6th grade math and completed her doctorate in education this past fall. Finally, Patricia was in my reading class as an 8th grader. She didn't say much in class, but she sent me a card a few years later thanking me for being kind and caring. At the time, I was not aware that she was being bullied. When I spoke to her some years later, I apologized for not doing more. She responded by saying that my kindness and care helped her through a difficult time. And I'm proud to say that Patricia is now in her 8th year as a 2nd grade teacher. I have many more stories like this. Small things I said or did, even if I wasn't aware at the time, had a big impact on my students. And I'm also reminded of the teachers who inspired me to enter the profession. It was those little things that made me believe that I could be a good teacher. I'm sure each of you has a memory of a small thing a teacher said or did that inspired you. As you move forward, remember that sometimes the smallest things you say and do have the biggest impact. I'd like to congratulate each and every one of you for your acceptance into the teacher education program. Your official name tag will be available for pickup in the field placement and licensure office in Reed Hall. This is the pin that gets you into your field placements. So make sure that you pick it up, and in any field placement in which you participate, wear it with pride. Show your Bobcat spirit and represent us well. At this time, we will honor our new teacher education program inductees. Bravo. How about a virtual round of applause for all of our teacher education program inductees? I am just so inspired by reading your most exciting thoughts about this program. And I noticed that many of you stated that you can't wait to begin building those relationships with students. Seems like that's the theme of the evening, and that really resonates. Thank you. So now I would like to introduce someone for many of you who needs no introduction. I'd like to introduce Mr. John Mielek, who is our Director of the Office of Field Placement and Licensure.
Thanks, Anne. This is always a really exciting time for us when we are welcoming new people and wishing our students who are going out to student teach in the fall good luck. I'm going to share my screen here if I can get it to work. Okay, Becky, I'm not seeing it as an option. Well, I don't know that I'm going to be able to share my screen. Ah, here we go. I'm trying to get my, sorry for the delay. Becky, it won't let me share my screen, so I'm going to just go without it. Before we talk to our student teachers, I want to take 1 second, and every semester, our faculty and staff sit down and think about students who are really doing things that make a difference in the program. And they look at people who are doing really good in their classes, they're role models for other people. Maybe they're doing really good work in their um, field placement, or they're really doing a good job of following the dispositions that they need to show as someone who's in the teacher education program. And then they send that so that we can recognize them at this event. And so for this semester, I'm going to read off the names of people who have been recommended by our faculty and staff as showing really good professionalism and dedication to teaching. So first we have Matt Biasotti, who is a K-12 art educator, Lolita Morgan, who's a 512 social studies, Kelsey Kraft, who is K-8 and K-12 agriculture education, Savannah Love, who is K-8, Brianna Anderson, who's K-8 and K-12 Spanish teaching, Gracie Campbell, who's K-8, Brianna Anderson, who's K-8, and Whitney Witcham, who is K-8. Let's give all of them a big round of applause, and I'd encourage each of you, as you enter the program, to follow their example and do great things. Now I want to switch and think about our fall 2021 student teachers. Each semester, we try to think about what advice can those students share with students who are brand new to our program. What do they wish someone would have told them when they were starting the program? What things to pay attention to? What rumors to avoid? Really how to be the most successful that they can in this program. So I'm going to ask our student teachers in just a moment to go ahead and turn on their video, and then they can share words of advice with our brand new students. And while they're doing that and starting to think about their advice, there are a couple of things that we like to share with all of you, but particularly as you're headed into student teaching, and it really kind of builds on what Dr. King was talking about building relationships. You want to build relationships with your students, with your cooperating teachers. You want to build relationships with other teachers in the building, the front office staff, as many people in that building as you can. And sometimes those relationships are often with people that you may not always interact with on a full regular basis. So the custodians, the lunch ladies, the paraprofessionals, everyone in that building will be giving feedback to your cooperating teacher and to other people supporting your placement about how you're interacting with them across the different building environments. And then reflect. We really want you to take the time during student teaching to reflect on why you wanted to be a teacher. Are you getting what you want out of it? I was reading a student journal the other day, and I won't tell you the student to respect their privacy, but they were talking about this experience of student teaching. And what they were reflecting on was they felt like they were getting stuck in classroom management. And they took a step back and they said, I didn't go into teaching to be a classroom management specialist. I got into teaching to build relationships with kids and to teach them. And so they started focusing more on building those relationships with their students and less about the classroom management. And a funny thing happened. As they started building better relationships with their students, their classroom management got easier. And I thought it was a really important reflection that they had to step back and think about what their purpose was and then redirect their energies into the things that mattered to them. And it had positive results on their teaching. I think my best piece of advice for someone going out to student teaching is we want you to continually seek progress, not perfection. During student teaching, we know you're going to make mistakes. We know things are not always going to go how you plan. That's okay. It's a great opportunity to learn, grow, and develop. So always be thinking about making that progress. Don't worry about being perfect. So as we start to transition into some of the student teachers who are online, um, what do you wish someone told you when you were starting the education program? And you can just unmute and share your best piece of advice. And I see we have a number of people, so I hope I don't have to call on people. I hope you'll just take this opportunity on your own. And I think I might have just thrown a wrinkle at Becky. Becky, can you unmute them or can I?
I actually have it set so anyone can unmute themselves.
All right.
Well, I can go ahead if that's all right. If you'd like, I can turn my camera on, but if I don't need to, then I'll just say my piece. My name is Cody Hiron. I'm going to be a student teacher in fall 21. It's been a really great 3 years here at MSU, but my best piece of advice, and I heard this last year actually at the teacher education program, was to lean heavily on your professors and advisors and classmates in your cohorts because they are resources and they want to see you succeed and they have your best interest in mind. So don't be afraid to ask for advice or ask questions. If you have a question, someone else probably has that same question. So lean into them. They're rooting for you.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and have the next person go.
All right,
I
I'll
can go.
go.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go. My name's Lolita Morgan, and I would say that it's important to be open to any experience that kind of comes your way through the program. You know, a placement for tech club or practicum that's outside of your age or subject preference may actually end up revealing potential and opportunities that you would have never imagined for yourself. So it's important to just be open and ready to embrace anything that comes your way.
Yeah, thank you. Also, my advice is kind of along with what Cody said, but don't be afraid to ask like too many questions, especially in your practicums. Um, because I feel like me personally, I went in at first and like I didn't want to seem like I didn't know what I was doing, but the reality is you don't. So, don't be afraid to ask too many questions or that a question is not a good question or anything like that, because that's what those people are there for. And this is our kind of opportunity to be able to ask all the questions and get all the answers that we need right there. So,
this would be early on to find something specific about each student that you enjoy about them, because there are going to be frustrating moments, and it's a lot easier to see them in a positive light if you have something positive about them in your mind. So yeah, kind of on that relationship building piece.
My name is Whitney, and my advice is kind of similar to Stormy's, but I would say just show up with a positive attitude every day and be open to learning new things, even from your students.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Isaac Osgard. The tip that I would have is don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to reach out in maybe an area that you're not, the most familiar with. Because what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for quality learning experience. Um, the best thing that I've been able to do at Montana State, outside of obviously gaining a lot of great knowledge in my different courses, would be branching out into different organizations. So at Montana State, I'm a member of, my major is agricultural education, high school teaching. I've been able to be a part of the Ag Ed Club on campus. I've been able to be part of the Collegiate FFA, which we're working on getting state going here this week. But don't be afraid to just reach out and try. I think our best asset, our most important resource that we have is our teachers, our advisors, and our colleagues. So much can be learned throughout those great minds.
Anyone else?
I can go next. My name is Ella Billmeyer, and I would just say the biggest thing would be to roll with the punches. Going into field placements, you're obviously not just a student anymore, you're a teacher. So remembering to do things that are going to help relieve stress on your end are going to be good in the long run.
Any more student teachers with advice?
My advice would just be to try to teach as much as possible, even in Prac 1, just try to offer to teach even short lessons or big lessons. Just try to get involved as much as possible.
I kind of had something that went along with that as well. The most important thing too is to advocate for yourself, because sometimes you're not going to get that teacher in your placement that gives you all that responsibility you want. But if you're respectful and professional when asking if you could have more, they're way more likely to give it to you. So just definitely communicate and advocate for yourself.
Any more student teachers?
I think Ashley Shiner. Ashley, you were starting to say something. I think you were muted. Ashley, if you can't unmute, I invite you to type in your words of advice into the chat, okay? And anyone else who would like to do so, please feel free to type in your words of advice into the chat.
Yeah, so Jasmine or Eve, feel free. I see you hiding on there. But go ahead and feel free to type that in. That's great. I really thought that the comment about this field experience is an opportunity to see yourself differently. And it's so true. When we go into the schools, those are professional experiences. And it's a great opportunity to start finding your professional identity. Who are you going to be as a teacher? It's a great opportunity to stop and think about yourself in a really different role. So I've really latched onto that one. The last thing that I have is number one, to say thank you to all the student teachers for sharing those words of advice. Those were really great. And those are things that if you're just coming into the program, I hope you really find those useful as you progress. I actually really like the fact that someone recycled the advice from last semester because it was good advice and it meant something to them. And I hope that each of you that gave advice, someone in this audience is hearing your advice and thinking, boy, that is good stuff that I want to take forward. So thank you for sharing. On behalf of everyone in our department, faculty, staff, we really want to wish you, each and every one, the best as you head into the final stage of your journey to become a teacher. We encourage you to stay in touch. Let us know how we can assist you in crossing the finish line. You've got this and you're going to do great. We can't wait to see you back next semester with your students in seminar and all the other times we get together. We love hearing your stories, sharing your excitement, and helping you figure out how to get barriers out of your way to finish strong. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Eubank. Thank you all for coming tonight. It's so great to see you.
Thank you so much, John. I heard quite a bit of advice that resonated with me, and one of the things kind of taken together that I'm thinking about is you're not alone. Even sometimes when you feel like you might be alone, you're not alone. And so by supporting each other, we can get through this together. Even though you are individually completing your degree and it's your accomplishment and your achievement, um, none of what we do in teacher education is and teaching is alone. It's always with a team. All right, thank you again, John, and thank you, Fall 2021 student teachers. At this time, we'd like to honor all of our Fall 2021 student teachers with a little slideshow. Congratulations to all of our student teachers for fall of 2021. So student teachers, we have a gift for you as well. Please stop by the Field Placement and Licensure office to pick up your copy of Catch and Release. This is a book full of information and insight for new teachers. Tonight's event would not have been possible without the assistance of our amazing team, including Karen Funk, our college communications specialist, and Rebecca Stanton and Bill Freese, who are facilitating the technology, along with Beverly Garrison as well, to bring this virtual ceremony to you. Once again, on behalf of the Department of Education, congratulations to each of you. We wish you the best in the months and years to come. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of the semester and year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.